Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. We thank GoFan and VNN, the exclusive sponsors of the UIAAA Connection. Now operating as one combined company, GoFan and VNN offer a seamless experience through digital ticketing and athletic websites. They make it easy to direct fans to one central place for schedules, communication, and tickets for both home and away events. We appreciate GoFan and VNN for their continued support and exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Jeff Lowell, Certified Athletic Administrator, the District Athletic and Activities and Title IX Coordinator for the Bellevue School District in Washington. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff.
Hey, thanks, Hutch.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our international audience where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
I actually am the son of a Navy pilot. My dad was in the Navy and had a 21-year career, so my early childhood was all over the place. I bounced between California and Virginia a couple of times. I was born in California and then went back and forth because of different postings through my early childhood. I got to spend a couple of years overseas in Norway when I was in elementary school. Came back to Virginia, moved to Colorado when I was in middle school, and then my dad retired and took a job with Boeing. So moved up to the Pacific Northwest when I went into high school. And once I got up here, I ended up setting down some roots and haven't left really. Went to high school here, went to college in the state of Washington. Really, University of Washington is where I graduated from. Some people laugh at this, but I was a Wazoo Cougar as a freshman and then transferred over to the University of Washington after that. So I have both crimson and gray and purple and gold in my closet. My first job was at a water park around here, so just south of here. It tells you what type of age I am right now. My first job was $3.50 an hour, lifeguarding down at Wild Waves theme park as a lifeguard down there. And then after I got into education, I actually got my master's degree over in Connecticut. Went to University of Connecticut and got a counseling degree, and so I've been kind of all over the place. Been lucky.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Now let me ask you, with you jumping around so much with your dad being a pilot, and particularly when you were in Norway, was there chances to play youth sports there? I'm sure in Colorado you had a chance, and in Washington, obviously you maybe played some high school, but talk about that youth experience with you moving so much.
Yeah, mine was a little bit different, right? So through third grade, there was a little bit of organized youth sports. So in Norway, the one sport we were able to play is baseball. And most people don't know this about me at all. My first love athletically, I really, really, really wanted to be a baseball pitcher, and really had a good time with it. And will fully admit to a large audience here that I was not very good. I was not a very good baseball player. I ended up playing catcher. Obviously in second and third grade, nobody's going to have them pitching the ball, but got to do that. And when we got back from Norway and Virginia, there was a chance to do some swimming, and in the summertime in Virginia, and then we played some soccer. Didn't really pick up baseball again, but then when we got to Colorado, we tried. My older brother and I tried football. I wasn't very good at that either. We kept swimming though. We really got involved. My whole family, I have two brothers and a sister, and all four of us swam when we were in Colorado. And that's what we spend most of our time doing. And then once I got up here in the Northwest, when I got into high school, I tried football as a freshman. And at the time, I think I weighed about 110 pounds. So that was about the end of my football career. But kept swimming, really got into the aquatic sports, and swam through the 4 years of high school. and while I was in high school, picked up water polo for the first time. And so when I moved out of high school, I was not a good enough swimmer to swim collegiately, but at the University of Washington, they had a club sport. They had club water polo, so we got to play a number of other universities up here in the Northwest. So played Wazoo, played Oregon, Oregon State, Simon Fraser University, University of Victoria, University of British Columbia. And that actually was a great time. It was a lot of fun playing club water polo in college.
Let me have you talk a little bit more about water polo. I've only played a couple times in my life, and I grew up in a swim pool when I was younger. I loved swimming and,
Yeah.
messing around, but and I wouldn't say that I seriously played water polo, but I want you to explain to our listeners what a taxing game that is. Because if you look at it on TV, it looks like, oh, they just swim, pick up the ball, throw it. But I want you to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's no joke. It's not for the faint of heart. So you can mix basketball, a little bit of soccer, a little bit of wrestling, and swimming all at the same time, right? The idea when the game is played the way it's supposed to be played, it's in an all deep pool. So you're not touching the bottom, you're not grabbing onto the sides, and you're marking up defense. I mean, really, if you're playing man-to-man defense, you're really marking up against another person, treading water the whole time, treading water against somebody, trying to maintain position, all while you're trying to keep your head above water. So it's a fun game. It's a really fun game. I had a great time playing, um, and I actually played for a while outside of college in some men's leagues and things, but at this point, I don't know if my knees could take it. That would be the biggest reason I don't get back in the pool to try and play it again.
Well said. So, what led you then? Was your major in education when you left college? You always wanted
I,
to get into
I
education?
Yeah, kind of another thing. I've told some people this, and people kind of laugh when they hear it. When I went into college, I thought I was going to be a politician, and I'd done student government in high school, and really got into the idea of becoming a politician. And when I transferred from Wazoo to the University of Washington, I had to declare myself an English major and a history major to actually get classes that first quarter. I was going to be at the University of Washington. So I drove away that day after signing up for classes, deciding I was going to teach English and I was going to coach swimming in high school. And that's what I would do. I decided politics wasn't going to be for me. And I didn't look back. Once I made the decision to get into education, never look back. But that was the major decision, right? English history major. And then, like I said, got a master's degree in counseling a few years later.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. Let me have you talk for a minute, Jeff, about the mentors and the leaders that you've had in your life, both as a young teenager and as a grown working adult that have made a difference in your life.
Yeah, my parents for sure. My as I said, my dad growing up was in the military, and a great deal of the work ethic and those kind of things that I end up really relying on today still come from my parents. Uh, I have my high school swim coach was a gentleman by the name of Les Kendig. Les, really, ended up teaching me a lot about kind of the organizational aspect of competitions and how to build a lineup and put people into a position to be successful, not only individually but as a team. I had a club swim coach, and I would say that he made an impact on me too. A guy named Ron Koch. Ron left when I was going into my senior year from Washington and moved up to Alaska. But was probably one of the first coaches I ever had who really instilled in me that a coach can draw something out of somebody that they didn't think was really there. So and then I had an English teacher in high school that um, she she made a lot of impact. Was a great influence on me, and I didn't even know it at the time. And it was only after I got out of school that I really understood the impact she had. Getting into into teaching and coaching, man, everybody that I come across ends up impacting me in one way or another. My first teaching job was down in Renton, south of here, and the English department chair there, Helen Battalion was her name. Helen, God rest her soul, she was I mean, probably one of the best teachers that I've ever met in my life. Another teacher that I worked with named Ken Storkson. Those two really impacted me a lot as a young teacher. I went from Lindbergh, and I started working at the Mercer Island School District, and gentleman that I ran across there he came in as the principal a few years after I was there. And once I moved to the Bellevue School District, he followed a year and a half later. So I've really 20 plus years of my professional career. John Harrison is his name. John is right now the chief of schools here in Bellevue. He is the guy who actually told me that I should get into school administration. He's been a huge influence. And then I married into a family, and Tom Doyle is my father-in-law. Tom is a Hall of Famer here in the state of Washington in the WSAAA Hall of Fame. He's the guy who actually started the WSAAA AD mentoring program that the national mentoring program was developed from, and he has been a daily influence on how I approach the athletic director role too. So there's a few names for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here, Jeff.
Yeah.
What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
I saw that you asked me that question. I don't know. The word failure is really kind of an interesting one, and so I've thought about that, and I've always been somebody who, whether it's the right way to do things or the wrong way to do things, I go back even to coaching, or teaching or anything else, and kids that I didn't feel like I reached, or goals that I ended up setting for myself that I didn't quite attain, that kind of thing, and that happens regularly. Still happens today. So I don't know if I could point to one that says it's the biggest failure, but what do I learn? Every day I end up learning that I'm never gonna be perfect. But all I can do is really kind of approach every situation. And I have an intern from one of our schools here that works in the office yesterday. I was even telling her that the only way you can really approach something is to really analyze the situation, and then do your best to try and achieve what it is you set out to do. And what I've learned along the way is that it is okay if you don't achieve everything, so long as you can look at yourself at the end of the day and say you tried your hardest to do the best by the people you're working with and for. And that to me is probably the one thing that I've learned from what I would say is probably daily failures along the way.
Well said. Thank you for sharing that. Let's have you talk for a moment, Jeff, about the job of athletic administrator and how it's changed or how much it's the same since you first began.
Yeah, let's start with how it's the same. I can honestly say that I believe that when kids are participating in athletic events or activities at their school, it is still something that affects them in a way that participating for a club or participating in AAU sports or outside organizations, it just doesn't feel the same. And when you talk to kids about their athletic career, the things that they do for the school are the ones that they remember deeply, and for good reason, right? So, and I don't think that's changed. I'm the state meet manager for swimming here in the state of Washington, have been for 17 years now since I got done coaching. And I still see kids every year that say that the state swim meet, out of all the swim meets they go to, and some of them they go to really high level swim meets, hits them differently than any other meet they go to. But the job has changed. I mean, it really has changed. When I first started and really got involved in the day-to-day operations of a high school athletic program, there was a lot of focus just on that particular season, and I guess the easiest way to put it is, you could talk to a coach, they could go and coach the way they wanted to, and probably the way they talk to kids would get to about 95% of them. And I think the biggest change today is the fact that we have so many coaches that are coming from outside the education department or outside of education altogether. And many of them don't know how to really talk to kids. And that's the biggest job, I think, of an athletic director, is how to help coaches who you're trying to get to a place where they can instill what they know, to understand how best to teach. So it's almost a teaching program at the same time that they're trying to implement an athletic program. The other is that, in the state of Washington, we're a place where funding for schools is a major conversation. And I see every day, I see headlines in newspapers about levies having to be passed, and people are worried about, being able to fund things the way they need to. And so my job right now at the district level, I believe, is to really make sure that people at the schools have what they need to implement the programs the way they want to and the way they need to. And that's what I hustle to do every day more than anything else, right? Make sure that they can provide those. And 15 years ago, it may not have been an issue.
Perfect. Let me ask you now about your journey with WSAAA and the NIAAA, how that all got started, and how you grew to be the famous chair of LTC 508, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah. Well, I got introduced to WSAAA, I was coaching swimming, and like I said, my father-in-law is Tom Doyle. Tom was involved with WSAAA, at a leadership level, and we'd come over. The WSAAA conference was always around our spring break, and so my family would come over, and we'd kind of intersect with Tom and my mother-in-law. And so I got introduced to people and got introduced to that organization while I was still coaching, and got to see a really caring group of individuals who professionally really wanted to connect and end up helping each other do their jobs better. As soon as I ended up getting involved in the day-to-day athletic department work at Mercer Island, I joined WSAAA, and have been in tune with what that organization's been doing for 20 plus years. When Tom retired from running the mentor program, I ended up taking the WSAAA mentor program over too, and ran that for a number of years. Then I decided I needed to step away from doing that and spend my, I've said this to a number of people. I think mentoring is one of those things where you can't have one person do it for too long, can't lead a group for too long, because I think it ends up stagnating, right? So cycling people through and letting more people's ideas come through. So I stepped away from that, but it's been fantastic. The organization is fantastic. I appreciate everything they do for athletic directors across the state. That introduction ended up leading me to the NIAAA and going to the NIAAA conferences. And as soon as I ended up taking the first legal courses, I actually really got interested in in that aspect of the profession. I was encouraged to apply to see if I could be part of the faculty. They I don't know what they saw in my application, but invited me to go and sit and be part of that faculty. So being able to sit with Lee Green and Peg and Arthur Ballard and a number of us that are now course chairs ended up coming in at the same time. Zach Stevenson and I can still remember sitting in Nashville in courses, 4 courses that just watching the way they're taught, and leaning on those 3 people who ended up teaching all 4 of them for a lot of years. And then at the same time, I was encouraged to apply for the mentoring, the National Mentoring Committee, and was lucky enough to serve as the mentor chair for a number of years as well. So it's again, another really good organization that has provided me an opportunity to meet great people across the country and get involved in some pretty darn cool things.
Well, along that same line, let me ask you now, you are the chair of the 508. I want you to talk about the unique experience that is, because I understand now the UIAAA, excuse me, the NIAAA has close to 60 courses, if not over
Yeah.
60 now, which means there's got to be 60 course chairs. That's 60 people out of, what are we at now? Membership, 17,000 people.
Yeah.
I mean, to be entrusted with that. And so talk about being a course chairman. What's that like?
You say it like that, all of a sudden I feel a greater weight, right? So it was over the last couple of years, one of the things that the gentlemen that end up leading that faculty, the whole faculty, they wanted to make sure that there was a course chair for each of the legal courses, and so I was asked if I would end up being the lead for 508, and it was just kind of a natural, yeah, sure. The 508 course is a good one also. It's there's a lot of, I mean, every one of the legal courses is dense. There's a lot of information that's there. It's essential information. It's foundational information for every athletic director. But last year was actually a really interesting year as we worked through the course revision. And what it cemented for me is that the information that Lee ended up putting together is really good information, and I would say in many ways timeless information. And so what we were able to do is then really just update the course presentation to fit kind of what the vision of course presentations are moving forward. But it was a really good experience to be able to go through that revision process and see. I kind of jokingly talk about the you pull the curtain away and you can kind of see the magic that happens behind the curtain. And being able to be a part of that was really kind of a humbling experience also.
Let me ask you, allow a follow-up if you will. So,
Yeah.
Because 790 right now, which is my course, is in the revision stage, which you mentioned the revision. So I want you to maybe talk a little bit more. I mean, I understand that at one time, of course, Lee was the guru. And
Yeah.
of course, it was all over all four of the courses. Then, of course, AB helped out Peg. But I don't know that a lot of our listeners understand exactly the nuts and bolts and the time commitment and exactly how detailed a rewrite is as to what you keep, what you move, what you emphasize. So talk about that for a minute.
Well, just to emphasize just the importance the NIAAA sees in these legal courses also, they flew the legal faculty in. So Tom Horn and Peg and Scott Dravick and myself were in Indianapolis for 2 solid days.
Right.
Really, talking through and debating, what to do. Number one, to really make sure that we don't lose anything that's key. And then number two, how to then take the first 2 revisions, 504, 508 last year, and make sure that in the next revisions, 506 and 510 are getting revised this year, that they can be done the same way, right? These 4 need to be in alignment. Otherwise people are going to get legal things differently, and that's not going to work for anybody. So that debate, that discussion, that really important connection in February of 2020, 25 really led to, a series of, conversations. And I'll fully admit when I get a project like this, I'm somewhat of a control freak, and a lot
Mhm.
of hours for me reviewing the documents and reviewing what's being presented, and putting it into a format and that's easily readable and easily accessible for readers and things. But yeah, you're right, Hutch. The detail that goes into a revision of a manual that is hundreds of pages, along with then making sure that the important elements of the manual go into the presentation without overwhelming somebody in a 4-hour course. So what are you going to present to them in a 4-hour course? And feedback that we get for the legal courses all the time. I fully admit I'm not a law professor. I can't teach a course like a law professor would and do it justice. So adjusting some of that to make sure that there is some audience participation was really kind of a key element of the revision process also.
Perfect. And I should have mentioned this earlier for those of our audience that have not taken the legal courses. 504 of the 14 legal duties, 506 Title IX. So 508 then covers, I know you and I know this, but just cover it quickly for those who may not be aware.
Oh gosh, let's make sure we get it right. So 508 has got multiple elements to it. Sometimes for whatever reason, Hutch, I blend 508 and 510. So 508, bear with me for just a second. We are looking at, like I said, I want to make sure I get it right. And I should have it on the top of my head, but the first thing that comes to hazing is the first one, is the first major element of the whole thing. And then from there, we get into, oh God, why am I blanking already? Of course, you would have caught me with that.
Happens to all of us.
Yeah. So hazing, where's my slide? There it is. So hazing, constitutional law, and then we get into statutory law. So, and this is where I wanted to make sure I had all of the elements the way it's presented in the course. So the Fair Labor Standards Act. So we're really talking about employment kind of elements. And one of the major issues that athletic directors may end up running into, especially in a smaller school where they may be asked to set pay rates and things like that, is doing something that may end up getting them in trouble because they don't provide the correct pay rate, that kind of thing. So the Fair Labor Standards Act. We go into ADA, so participation for student athletes who have disabilities and what type of accommodations that we are required to provide. And then we do touch on FERPA and HIPAA in 508 also. So those are 508, 510 then. And this is where I sometimes end up crossing over, but 510 then deals with social media. And then from there, event security. And when I teach 510 at the NIAAA conference, I always end up getting the event security. And so there are times I end up sometimes thinking about that with 508 also, but social media, event security, transgender participation, pregnant and parenting student athletes, and intellectual property rights. So that's 510. Lots of things that people should be thinking about. But every one of the courses, if listeners haven't taken them, I highly recommend them. And if you've taken them once, there's nothing to say you can't take it a second time.
That's perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And thanks for giving us the insight on the whole 508 experience as a sidelight for our listeners. Go back to when I took 504. That was 504. That was it.
Yeah.
The legal course, which then went to 504, 506, then went to 4, 6, and 8. Now it's gone to 4, 6, 8, and 10. So thank you so much for that. Let me have you talk for a minute about the Washington Legends. Of course, the Legends, at least the people I know, and that would be obviously Timmy Graham, Ticker, Eric Titus, Scott Norrie, Melton Jefferson, Jim Piccolo, Wendy Mullich. Obviously, now I didn't know your father-in-law, but Tom Doyle. So
Yeah.
talk about, I mean, that's a great that's more than the 4 you get on Mount Rushmore, but that's an impressive list of Washington people.
Yeah, we're really blessed up here, the number of people, and it's fascinating sometimes to see kind of a cohort of people. And you think about all of them working in the profession at the same time, and you think, God, how good did kids have it when all of them were running athletic departments across the state? But um, I'm actually blessed to have gotten to know Dave Ticker really well. Dave and my father-in-law are very good friends, and worked at WSAAA leadership together. So I got to know Dave and Cindy really, really well. They're fantastic people. What they did for the state organization is tremendous, and took WSAAA to a place that now the new executive director, Eric Tite, has taken it over. Eric, and then Stark, who is helping him out, Stark Porter. They're able to then build on a foundation that I would say will never crumble at this point, right? And all we're going to be able to do is rise to new heights. It's great that you mentioned Jim Piccolo. So Tom worked with Jim Piccolo and Barb Twardes to start the mentoring program in the state of Washington. I got to know Jim really well. When I took 790, Jim taught 790. And for those who don't know him, Jim is a guy, when you walk into a room, you know he's in the room, right? That voice, I mean, it is a coaching voice, and he just took command of a room. He's a great man. I haven't seen him in a long time. I really miss seeing him and what he could provide for people. And was just a really even-keeled soul that really brought sense and reason to a lot of things that were going on in the state. I'm lucky enough to still get to see Tim Graham on a regular basis. Tim still, after he retired from Tumwater High School, he's still working. State of Washington is broken up into 6 activity districts under the WIAA umbrella. And Tim is still serving as the District 4 director. So I still see him on a regular basis and get a chance to work with him. And then I get to work with Wendy Malich closely. Wendy and I both sit on the WI executive board, and get to see her. Really appreciate what Wendy has done for the profession, but also for women in the profession. And took some doors and not just broke them down, but I think kind of tore them off the hinges. And she's really done some things to pave the way for what I see across the state of Washington as a phenomenal group of female athletic directors. And I think many of them end up looking at her as a mentor, and every time I see Wendy, she's just smiling and willing to give, and kind of second to none as well. You're still muted, Hutch.
Sorry.
That's okay. Happens to the
Let me
best
have
of
you.
you.
Yes, let me have you share your observations. I say the recent conference, by the time this airs, it will have been 6 months ago, but the
Yeah.
recent conference in Tampa, just talk about what it's like to be there. Tampa being a great site, everything was so close. Just share your thoughts about that conference.
Every NIAAA conference, you walk away with something. And being down in Tampa, I would say the experience is the same I've had in almost anyone. The site was obviously a little bit different. Always being down by the water. As I said, born in California, lived in Virginia a lot. I'm a water guy. I love being at the beach. I love the sun. So being in Tampa that way and being close to the water was fantastic. But for me, when I go, I know other people like to try and get around and soak up sites and everything else. And I'm typically really busy at these conferences.
Right.
For 5 or 6 years, it was you had conference or committee chair meetings, and I had my mentoring meetings and teaching 2 classes and trying to take a class and everything else. And before I knew it, the conference was over. So for me, I try and soak up as much as I can. And I typically hang around the conference center as much as I can, because you're always going to run into somebody that you haven't seen in a while. Have those in between conversations, in between presentations and things of the sort. Those to me actually are some of the best parts of the whole thing. I think Phil and the staff end up doing a fantastic job providing a great professional development opportunity for all athletic directors across the country.
Great insight. Thanks so much for sharing that. What's the favorite part of your job, Jeff?
I think for me, I told somebody this week I'm not what many would think of as an athletic director. There are lots of ADs who go to a lot of events and things like that. We have 4 comprehensive high schools in Bellevue. I have a wife and 23-year-old special needs daughter at home. And if I went to one event in Bellevue, I'd have to go to all of them. So I typically don't go to a lot of events. And what I have really defined my job here in Bellevue as being somebody brought up Radar O'Reilly. If you've ever watched MASH before, right? So Radar was a guy somebody could lean on to get what somebody needed. That's the way I look at my job, and really is the favorite part of my job right now. When people come to me and I can find a way to get them what they need so that they feel like they can continue to build their program, I feel good about it.
Let's finish with a couple of questions, Jeff. The first being this: you've got 2 suggestions for a brand new athletic administrator, and they need to follow Jeff's suggestions in order to become successful. What would your 2 suggestions be?
The first is that they find a core group of probably 3 to 4 people outside of their own school district that they can really lean on and bounce ideas off of. And especially when they feel like they're struggling, they can go and get some assistance, right? And end up making sure that they can get picked up when they need to. They need to identify who those people are, and they need to find a way to schedule time with them. So it's not random, but it's kind of on a consistent basis. That would be the first one. And then the second one is that if they're working for a school district or a private school or a charter school, wherever they're working, they need to go to their administration, and they need to make sure their administration understands just how important it is to become part of these professional organizations so that they have access to information that they can then work through, read, digest, become acquainted with, however you want to put it, and then can apply back in their own office. And if I see people right now that become isolated, they don't join the organizations, and those are the individuals where and the schools where we end up seeing turnover more and more often. But people that get involved, people that understand that there's resources, people understand that there's information that they can then bring home, those are the ones that have a chance to succeed in a great way.
2 great suggestions. Thank you for sharing those. We'll finish with this. Jeff, what questions should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
I saw that one too. I don't think you failed to ask anything. I appreciate the opportunity. And number 2, I can talk about this stuff all day long, right? So I guess the other thing, the favorite part of my job, when people just really want to start talking about the, kind of the why get into this, maybe is the only other one. Why would somebody want to get into this? Rather than, continue to coach or continue to something else. And I'll leave you with this. I got into education because I wanted to help kids, right? I wanted to help people. And, so you get into a classroom, I got into a classroom, figured I had 150 kids, and then however many were on my team. It was great. Felt really good to be able to coach them. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, I've learned things as a coach. And if I worked for the athletic department, then I'm helping probably 3/4 of the kids at a school rather than just 150, right? So rather than 25%. And then I got into administration with the idea that I could help every kid in the school. And then I got into the district office because then I could help kids across the entire school district. And so for me, why get into this profession? Because there are ways, especially when you learn and you develop skills and you develop a depth of understanding about how things work, where you can end up having an impact for a great number of people. And I don't do it because I want anybody to, come and pat me on the back or anything else, but just because I think that's what my calling is. So that's I think what I would end up leaving with people is really, really spend time thinking about what you're doing and how you can best end up serving those that are there in your community.
On that note, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Jeff Lowell, Certified Athletic Administrator, the District Athletic Director and Activities Director and Title IX Director in Bellevue, Washington, and the Chair of NIAAA LTC 508. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you, Hutch.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.